Why are people leaving? Okay. All right. Okay, I think people are joining. Someone's. All right, I think I'll start. I mean, people will join uh, as and when they have to. Okay, obviously. So, okay, Mr. Amodu Kuroma is here. He's the founder of RPG Africa, and it's all because of him that I'm here. So, firstly, before I start, I'd like to extend thanks to him as well as my friend and the director of uh, Iviman Dhruv Kulkshetra, because of whom I'm here today. All right, so on the note of saying thanks, I'd like to thank a few people. All right. I want to thank my parents for not killing me at birth. I owe them my life. I want to thank the thousands of millions of men and women who fought for me to go to school. I owe them my education. And I want to thank society for letting me pursue my dreams. I owe them my future career. I find myself, I'm not that old, I'm just 17. But in my lifetime, I've found myself seeing that we women find ourselves thanking people for things that are very basic: our right to live, our right to education, our right to have a career of our choice. I'm pretty sure a lot of you over here understand that for women, immediate family and society play a huge role in deciding our lives. And I'm here to speak to all of you about this topic, and all of you women who are here, if you can see this, if you can hear this, if you have access to this, you have privilege. These basic human rights are denied to so many girls around the world. Female feticide, forced child marriage, abuse, female genital mutilation are just a few challenges that women face today. UNESCO reports show that today there are about 481 million women who don't have basic literacy skills, who do not know how to read or write their first language. This is so just the fact that you are here, that you can read these comments over here is a mark of your privilege, right? Okay. So let's start with some numbers. All right. Okay. I forgot to say good morning, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I live in India. I'm 17 years old. My name is Tanvi, by the way. I hope you know that. I'm in my last year of high school. Next year, I will be going to university where I will be studying graphic design. Um, I am very lucky, as I'm sure most of you can tell, that I've been brought up in I've been brought up in an environment where it has been taught to me that my education is first. Education comes first, and then that's the highest on my priority list at this point in time. But that's not the reality for so many girls around the world. There are 7.8 billion people on this planet. 49.3% of them are women. That's almost half. That's a pretty good number. Half of them are women. Now, imagine if I was running a business, all right? What do you think would happen if I wouldn't train half of my employees? The untrained half would be a burden to my business and I would not be successful. So, how is it that countries believe that they can thrive when they only educate half their citizens? When we women are not given the chance to develop our skills and experience our potential, we will be seen of as lesser value than as compared to men who already have access to education. Yesterday, my honorable colleague and friend, Miss Bo from Liberia, she had someone asked her a question: what about men? Well, my answer to that is, luckily, men are already in a position where where they do have some privileges compared to women. You will not see men being oppressed for going to school. You will not see men being shot at for trying to get an education. You will not see men staying at home because of a biological function. These are problems that women go through. So my answer to that is, feminism is not a movement that means just because we're bringing women up, we put men down. Feminism stands for both men and women. So I truly believe that only when women are brought up to the same level as men is when we start to look at both issues from the same point of view. Because until women don't have the same rights as men, rights for just one gender will not do anything for our society. When women are not given, okay, wait, I think, okay, can you hear me? Okay, I think you can. Sorry, my internet stopped working. All right, so as I'm from India, I think it would be fit if I talk about my country for a bit. And as I've discussed this with a few of my colleagues at RPG Africa, India and Africa do have some similar problems when it comes to women and women's right and women's literacy. All right. So, in many parts of India, especially the rural parts, women and girl childs are still seen as an economic liability because schooling is considered to be expensive and a waste because, after all, women have to be married off in the end. However, I urge every one of you who think this way or who know people who think this way to explain it like this. When you think of it in the terms of outcome on health, environment, and the economy, the education is an investment. It's not expensive at all. Studies show that just one more year of elementary school, just one more year, elementary school is grades 1 to 5, just one more year, and maternal and infant death rates fall by 10 to 15%. Every year, every extra year that a girl is in high school, her potential revenue increases by 17 to 25%, which impacts the GDP. So there's a clear link demarcation that if you educate women, your national income, your GDP will go up. There is no two ways about that. It's directly related. Thank you. The studies done by the World Bank also show that 15 to 30 trillion dollars are lost every single year because countries do not invest in education for their girl children. So I think it's high time that we all realize that education is not about just getting a job. For hundreds and millions of girls, it's literally the matter of life and death. All right. So I feel like now that we're talking about girls going to school and stuff like that, let's talk about the issues that girls do face there. Because in a country like India, India has a policy called the RTE, which is called the right to education. Basically, this states that everyone up till the age of 14 gets free education. So if you see, the problem in India is not getting girls to school. It's pretty easy to get them to school. The problem is to make them stay there. The issue is to make them stay in school. So I thought that a topic that we can talk about, which is very applicable to almost every female, a very prevalent female health issue, is menstruation periods. It's a phenomenon experienced by almost every girl. Right now, as of today, there are 1.8 billion girls who are of reproductive age who do menstruate every month. Studies show 1 in 10 girls in Africa don't go to school because they got their period. 50 million girls don't go to school in all of Africa, by the way. And 500 million girls of reproductive age in the entire world do not have facilities, do not have access to feminine hygiene products. In countries, in developing and underdeveloped countries like Ethiopia, in India, 20 up to 23 between 23 and 50, sorry, between 23 and 50% of girls drop out before the age of 18 because of this problem. It's, I feel like, more than a logistical problem, this is more a cultural mindset. Because if you see in South Asian countries like Nepal, it's a very common tradition that when a girl or a woman starts menstruating, to send her to a shed for 5 to 7 days, for however long her period is. and they just stay there in isolation, as if this life sustaining process is a disease. This has led to death of millions of women around in Asia and in the world, wherever this is practiced. And think of that as a waste of potential. That's a waste of human life, right? So I remember last week I was reading. The reason I work with RPG Africa is because me and my co-founder Ryan, we run an online magazine called Fuel by Opinion. And I was just doing some reading for that. I was thinking of an article, and I read this really interesting article. Not interesting, actually, it was sad, a really sad article. It was an interview with a 14-year-old in Kenya, and she was telling the story about how she got her period when she was in school for the first time, and she didn't know, and she was just walking around with blood on her pants, and the kids laughed at her and made fun of her, and she felt like it wasn't their fault, it was her fault for menstruating, for going through a process that is completely natural. This can be combated so easily with education. So, sending girls to school is just one part. Teaching them the right things is another. Sex education is so important. Biology is so important. It is so common. I mean, I'm going to speak from personal experience. It hasn't happened to me, so not completely personal, but a few of my friends who go to schools different than mine have told me that, that uh, in eighth grade, when you are 12 or 13, the teacher comes and she puts the boys in one room and she puts the girls in one room and she teaches the girls about periods, and the boys don't have to learn about this. I think this is a huge problem, because if men do not know about a basic biological function, how do you expect them to empathize with women and stand with them when they need them the most? So I feel like there's a huge gap between the way education is treated in our schools, in especially in developing and underdeveloped nations. So exactly. So that creates a stigma, very well pointed out. So by saying that, no, this is just a topic that girls can talk about, you are inherently creating a stigma that periods are a thing that men should not talk about, that men should not know about, that should be kept under the covers. But that is not true at all. In fact, more than just the lack of products. So I feel like I've talked a lot about how women don't have access to feminine hygiene products, and that's a huge reason about why they're outside school. However, another very important part, as pointed out by my friend, is stigma. And stigma does not just exist in second world and third world countries, it exists in countries like USA and the UK also. In the USA, 1 out of every 5 girls misses at least 2 days of school per month because of her period. The USA charges 9% tax on feminine products. And it may not seem a lot, like 9 is a very small number, but for millions of women around the USA who are homeless, who have no home, who have no job, no means of income, this can be a matter of life and death, as complications from unhygienic practices during your cycle can be life threatening. Yeah. So yesterday again, Miss Po very articulately and very nicely highlighted all the importances of education and what an educated woman can do, and I wholeheartedly agree with everything she has said. So yeah. So I feel like instead of talking, I'm pretty sure the entire reason all of us are here are because we all agree that education for women is a foremost priority at this point in time, right? So I feel like we should dig a little deeper into problems that are faced in countries like India and many countries in Africa, um, regarding women in school. So I feel like there are 5 main points that I want to talk about. All right. So first will be your social and cultural factors. That's the so my bad. In rural areas, how families have an expectation of girls to stay home, to clean, to cook, to look after their families, and maybe that's how it would have worked a couple of centuries ago, but not anymore. It is very important for women to be independent and stand up on their own two feet. And this will not be possible if the familial expectations are stuck at the level of cooking, cleaning, and providing. Second would be early marriage. Early marriage is a problem that's very, very prevalent in South Asian communities and African communities, and even some parts of Europe. So it's very common in India to see women married, not women, not even women, girls, to see little children married off at the age of 14, 15, and 16. And this is the rate of child marriage is going down. It sure is going down, but it isn't going to stop in any way. I mean it's gonna take years of education and stuff to really completely put an end to it. So that's a huge thing, because the moment a girl gets married, what's the point of educating her? It's her husband's responsibility to look after her. So girls drop out then. Third is a point I actually picked up from my economics textbook. Shout out to my economics teacher. Um, the opportunity cost of school. So, opportunity cost for those who do not study economics is the cost of the best next alternative available in the market. So, for many families, especially like the poorest of the poor, the cost of sending a daughter to school really seems like an extra burden, especially when school requires, like you have your indirect fees, you have your direct fees. In many places, you have your uniform fees, you have your book fee. So when if governments realize that this is a real problem and they tackle this especially for the girl child, a lot of parents will be less reluctant to send their girls to school, as it will be less of an economic burden on them. Like, I don't blame them. Poor families, it is extremely hard to muster up finances, especially for your children's education. But it should be the country and the government's first and foremost priority to facilitate this. Sorry. Okay. Fourth, back to my point, which is connected about menstruation, lack of public cleanliness and hygiene facilities, toilets. Speaking from personal experience, so when I was in ninth grade, my school took not ninth, sorry, 10th grade. When I was in 10th grade 2 years ago, my school took me to an orphanage. Not just me, my entire class. My entire class went to an orphanage, which was for children whose parents were dead or their parents abandoned them because they were sick. And a thing I noticed was that there was only one place in the entire orphanage and the entire school where there was a separate washroom for girls and boys. It is extremely common for public schools in India, because public schools in India are obviously funded by the government, and the government is not putting enough funds um, towards public education. It's extremely common for girls not to have their separate toilet. And while this may not seem like a really big issue, because what do you have to do? You just have to go to the toilet. It is a big issue because past a certain age, 11, 12, when girls start menstruating, because of the stigma and just basic cleanliness and health, it is essential to have separate toilets for girls and boys. And when you don't have this, basically what's happening is that you are telling girls that if you have your period, if you need a separate washroom, it is best to stay home. And that is very harmful, because that avoids the girls cannot come to school. It's not possible to stay 6 hours without going to the washroom when you're on your period in school. So the girls eventually lose out on that. And obviously, fifth will be a lack of educational faculty. It is estimated that right now, again, a study done by the IMF, which says that right now there is about 70 million teachers needed. So the world does not have 70 million teachers right now. So it is obviously extremely important for people to understand the value of education and how it can change lives. And I feel like this last point isn't just directed towards girls, it's towards girls and boys. So yeah, put it in there. All right, so I want to go through the comments because I feel like it's been very long and I've just been talking. So let's go through. Okay, if you guys have any questions, feel free to send them on the WhatsApp group, or text this over here, because I can't see any questions over here. All right, so let me go through the group if there's any questions. There is no questions here. Okay, so that's all right. Yeah, so anyway, now so I've got all that out of the way. I feel like that's a lot that can be discussed on these topics. No one has any questions. I'm waiting for questions. How do you think you can convince the government in helping girls' education? So, as I pointed out in the very beginning, I think I've written the numbers down somewhere. Yeah. So, as I pointed out, the numbers, right? Yeah. So the elementary school, whenever a girl takes an extra year of high school, her potential revenue goes up by 17 to 25%, which is a huge number when if you add that number to the GDP. So the government obviously does. So the main goal of any government is to develop the country economically, socially, culturally, right? So when you add to the GDP of any economy, it is bound to develop. So it's very clear cut. So the more women are educated, the more women who go through basic schooling go to higher schooling. The more girls who go to higher schooling have more jobs. The more jobs, the higher the GDP of a country. So it should be a direct correlation. It's very baffling how some governments have not figured this out yet, but it's a direct relation. So the more the education level of not just women but just the population in general, the more the level of participation in education, the higher the GDP. All right, next question. How can we as teenagers help improve the situation? So I feel like a lot of us, we are in really privileged places where we like I feel like every girl over here goes to school or goes to college. I am extremely privileged that way. So I feel like all of us are in a position where we can give back to society and to the people who need our help the most right now. So obviously partnering with NGOs such as RPG Africa can help a lot, and I'm extremely lucky that I have received this opportunity. But women's literacy should be more than just from an economic standpoint, of course. But see, think about it from a person who does not care's point of view. To me and you as women, this is a very personal subject. This is a very personal topic. But to some governments, it may not be. Governments that don't think it's necessary to educate your population, it may not be. So when you have the economic standpoint is basically an incentive, which can make which can not convince is a really wrong word, but push governments in the correct way. How do you think girls can fend for themselves without any governmental help? Technically speaking, see, the government is not absolute. It depends on your family, your upbringing, your values, and basically how you've been brought up, your society. Because it's not absolute that every girl in rural areas is uneducated or that every girl in urban area is educated. It all depends on your family and your upbringing. So if you are educated, you honestly don't need the government to survive, and it's the government's job to understand that education comes first. Women do not need anyone's help. Women, as pointed out again by Miss Nunia Gabo yesterday, women are very strong. Women have the potential to move planets. Women give birth to humans. That's my mind. I'm pretty young, so my mind just still doesn't wrap around that concept. And women are so strong. Why would you think they need to depend on anyone? give a You educate a woman, as she said, I'm just quoting her at this point. You educate a man, you educate one person. But when you educate a woman, you educate a family, you educate thousands of children, you educate an entire generation. So just think of it from that point of view. Girls' education has a great impact on our society, but what I don't understand is that some parents lack the understanding and importance of educating the girl child. So I can't really speak about African culture, but I can speak about Indian culture, as this is something that we have been taught about a lot in our schools, and we just do know because we hear a lot of stories. The number one reason in India why girls are not pushed towards going to school by their own parents is because the mindset is that when a girl turns 14 or when a girl turns 15, we will marry her off. So what's the point of educating her if she's not going to help us in any way? But what parents do not realize is the potential that a girl can have individually without needing to get married. When you educate a girl, you teach her to stand on her own 2 feet, and she can work and she can support herself and her family. The question should be sent to the moderator on WhatsApp. Yeah, of course. Okay. How can I change the mindset of people who think women education is not important? Exactly everything I've pointed out in this. See, it's really hard in today's day and age to change the mindset of people because some people are stubborn and there's nothing you can do about it. However, if you give people an incentive, such as the one I pointed out, the economic incentive for governments, you may be able to change their mind. How do you think governments can improve on their current efforts for the same? So, honestly speaking, I'm uh, India does India's government has had quite a few initiatives that promote education and girl child education. So we have the RTE, we have the midday meal scheme, which basically okay, another point in countries like India and Africa where there is widespread hunger issues, world hunger issues. Um, a, a huge reason why parents don't send their kids to school is because they'd rather save that money on things like food, which is obviously you need food to survive. So you cannot blame them for not having money to fill the fees for school. So midday meal scheme was a program launched by the government of India where basically every day children get a wholesome and healthy meal. So this pushes parents to send their children to school because they are getting they're getting taken care of. What else has the government done? Then recently in India, not recently, a while back, a program called Beti Bachao Beti Padhao, which in English it means educate the girl child, save the girl child. um, Basically promotes female education. So I feel like when the government pushes agendas like this, it does have room for positive change in society. According to you, what are some of the challenges that government faces in providing quality women's education? So, as I said, I feel like sanitation and just basic facilities are the biggest hindrance to women in education because, again, as I said, as girls reach their reproductive age, it's very hard for them to function at a 7 hour day, 6 7 hour school day without going to the washroom because they do not have access to clean washrooms. So I feel like public facility infrastructure is the first thing that governments can improve upon when it comes to girls going to school. All right, that's it. Okay, so I will wait for a bit if there are any more questions. No one to send questions here again. Okay. Okay, so I feel like the okay I think the moderator wants you guys to send in questions to them, so you can do that. Do you feel the brunt of being a girl in Indian society? Yes, I do. So, okay, so yeah, this is the last question I'll take from here. The rest of the questions can be sent to me on WhatsApp directly. Okay, so this might seem like a very small issue, but it's an issue that exists in countries like India and the USA, and I'm sure in Africa. So obviously, I'm in a very privileged position where I have access to a lot of opportunities. From a very young age, it was taught to me that my education comes first and that I will go to college and I will get a career before looking at things like marriage and settling down and having a family. So while I am very lucky, there are small things in everyday life that do set women back, no matter how privileged they may or may not be. Simple things like the concept of a dress code. I'm not saying that the concept of a dress code is wrong. Being disciplined and being in uniform is a very important thing to do. But when I read reports or when I see my friends or even myself being reprimanded in school for things like that outfit is not appropriate, or that skirt is too short. I'm not saying that there's an issue with schools saying this to their children, because there's obviously a discipline that all kids need to live by if they're going to go to a school. But when you say things like that to girls, basically what you're saying to them is that your education does not matter as much as boys, because when they say things like you will distract the boys, what they're saying is that you need to fix yourself because you are distracting to men, and their education matters more than it does to you, more than yours does. And that's very problematic, and that's not a message that you should be sending out to girls or boys anymore. Yeah. What are possible measures taken by government and NGOs to give girls their right to education and to take part in development? Taken by government. Okay, so I pointed out a few measures that have been taken by my government that may or may not be the most effective, because as I said, the issue is not with sending girls to school. It is the issue is keeping girls in school. That is the biggest problem. NGOs, obviously, so NGOs do not have absolute power, unfortunately, because it's literally in the name, non-governmental organization. And if something is not mandated by the government, it just it will not work. So NGOs, obviously, the main goal of NGOs is to push for social change. Like what RPG is doing by holding this webinar, we are talking to all of you and trying to change any skeptics' minds, or trying to educate you on certain topics that some people have learned about. So there's not much NGOs can do except for share correct information and spread the right message, because after all, it is the government's responsibility to. Okay, yeah. Okay, all questions should be on the webinar group. All right. All right, so I think I'll wait for a little bit more time because I'm getting some questions on WhatsApp. Okay. I'm waiting for questions. What is the importance of menstrual health? Um, so almost every female on this planet goes through not goes through, it's a wonderful thing, it's not, you're not suffering, has her periods. So when a basic biological function is ignored by the base institutions of our society, our educational institutions, you are ignoring a very big part of girls' lives, right? Because every girl has a period, obviously. So let's look at this from the school point of view and from the person point of view too. All right. So from the school point of view, infrastructure is a major problem. Um, when I pointed this, I've said this like twice already. So the toilet thing. So when you do not have separate washrooms for girls and boys, um, it's difficult for girls to cope. Now let's talk about from a personal point of view. In many places in the world, there are taxes placed on reproductive health products such as tampons and pads. And this, what this does is basically renders these products very expensive to the poor parts of society. So what happens is that girls, they resort to things such as using rags and using leaves and cloth. And this is extremely harmful. This is very dangerous, as this can lead to, as being unclean during your period can lead to a syndrome called toxic shock syndrome, which kills around, I think I read this somewhere, which kills around somewhere between 200 and 300 girls every year. And it's something which can be avoided very easily. So why take that risk? How long do you think it will take for women to reach the same place as men? Honestly, there's a lot of people going around saying that it is 2020, women and men have all the same rights, but that is not true. Let's look at small things, like let's not even go to the big things like the gender wage gap. Small things like safety. As a woman, do you feel like, personally, I live in a really good city in India. I live in one of the biggest cities in India. But if you ask me to go outside on the road post 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. when it's dark, I will not feel safe alone. I will feel the need to have a friend with me, or a male friend, hopefully, because I do not feel safe. And I feel like that's a huge problem. So let's let's just take one thing: safety. The day women feel as safe as men in the roads of their own country, let's think of it as that day. That's the day that women and men have achieved equality. How are we going to rescue girls in the rural areas in terms of quality education? So obviously, like, education cannot be barricaded to just rural and urban areas. So I feel like, okay, wait, sorry, I got a few questions. Um, how are we gonna rescue girls in rural areas? Again, so firstly, the problem is not, I mean, obviously the government has to push the agenda too, but the problem starts at home. If the mindset of families, parents, and societies do not change, there is no way that we can help these girls, because they might want to learn, they might want to go to school, but if they don't have the ways, they don't have the means to do this, how will they do it? Okay. All right. Okay, so all right, so please send your questions to the moderator, because it's creating a mess on the group. If you have any questions, I'm surprised people are still watching. I'm very flattered. All right. Any questions? I am waiting. I also feel the need to point out to everyone that it is 2 a.m. in India, but I'm actually having so much fun doing this. I was very nervous, but I'm very excited now. In order for development to take place. Exactly, exactly. So nothing's gonna happen. Those solutions will not work if people do not change the way they think first. That's a very basic problem. Yeah. Do you think menstrual products should be free? The ideal answer to this question is yes, but that's the answer that would be possible in the ideal world. So while this is like my philosophy with everything. While I do enjoy thinking about what the best case scenario would be, it is very important to stay rooted and think about the reality, think about logic. So, while yes, I do believe the menstrual products should be free, this is technically not possible because the industries which are involved in the production of menstrual products will not be able to survive. Because, as I said before, 49.3% of the world is women, out of which statistically 98.7% of women do get their period. All right, so it's not going to be possible. My connection is unstable. Okay, so the biggest problem here is if you look at like in the USA, they have this thing called that women in the country call the pink tax, so they have to pay 9% more, and that is unnecessary because you shouldn't have to pay extra money for something that you cannot control. So I think getting rid of such taxes and such extra costs will go a long way. As a woman, if you could make a change, what change would you make? I feel like as a girl growing up today and relating to my experience and women all around the world, safety is the biggest number one issue in this world. So many girls drop out of school because they don't feel safe in their environment. So if I could change one thing about the world for women, it would be safety. I want every girl to feel safe where she is. I want to feel safe where I am. I want to be able to do the same things men do without being scared for my life or for my physical or mental health. Thank you. How do you think men could be educated and contribute to development of women? I did not talk about this. I am so sorry. All right. So this is something that I was very surprised by. So on the first day that I was involved with RPG Africa, Mr. Amoro Amgili had sent me a write up about what he believes is the vision for RPG Africa, and I found this one statement really insightful and really interesting. Is when he said that feminism is not a movement just for women. It is a movement for everyone because if women do not thrive, then society cannot thrive. So I'd like to take an example that'll hopefully make it easier to understand. The United Nations has a what is it called? Has a program called the He for She movement, which basically says that if men do not stand up for females, if men do not stand up for women, what is the point? What are you going to use your masculinity for if you cannot stand up for what is right? So I do feel like it is as much as a woman's responsibility to fight for her rights as it is a man's. Yeah, okay, men could be educated. All right. So when it comes to like actual education, I feel like it's really important for men to be educated the same way women are when it comes to things like biological functioning, sex education, education about menstruation, etc. All right. What are one of the major prejudices women people have against women's progress? So this is something that I have not personally experienced, but it is something that I know about, which is very prevalent in Indian culture, is the fear of letting women be independent. Because, as again pointed out time and again by people before me, independent women, strong women can change the world. And I feel like some people are still scared of women realizing this potential. They are scared of women realizing the power they hold. So I feel like the main and the only prejudice that there is against women's education is the fear of women getting ahead people and women standing up for themselves and women having their own lives and supporting themselves and their families. So this is yeah. Yeah, I didn't talk about it. I forgot, my bad. What do you think RPG Africa should do to give quality education to girls in Africa? So, as I pointed out before, NGOs cannot do anything if they're not backed by the government. All NGOs can do is spread the the message of greater good. They can spread the correct message and tell people what is right and what is wrong. But if the government doesn't back them up, it is extremely hard for NGOs, especially in countries like India and Sierra Leone, Kenya, Ghana, so many countries in Africa, to gain funding based off just what they say and what they convey. But honestly, I think RPG Africa is doing a great job. I personally know Amodu. He goes and talks to so many girls in so many schools, and that's just one person that I know now. I'm very new to RPG Africa, and I'm very honored to be at a position where I can talk to all of you. I'm the country director of India. Um, so yeah, I think RPG is doing a great thing by hosting these webinars for so many people and getting the message out. And that is the most and the least we can do at this point in our capacity. All right, so if there is more questions, finished with the... I was so scared about no one showing up for this, and I'm honestly so happy and so lucky that so many people, not just my friends, but like from all around the world, decided to show up for this. Thank you. Oh, there are more questions. I'm having a good time. I was so nervous, but this is actually so fun. Okay, I'm waiting for my friend to send me some more questions. Okay. What kind of programs can be planned and implemented for the progress of women? Um, all right, so again, like taking example, I feel like a place where my country is somewhat a little better than other developing countries is its value and respect for education. So uh, yeah, so yeah, so obviously educations like the like schemes and programs like the RTE are very important. I feel like a place where I can where my country can improve is by extending the RTE and extending it to say 18 years or 20 years, so that they ensure that more and more people stay in school. um yeah, so what kind of programs like that? So I feel like so that is a very institutional kind of, that is a very institutional point of view. That's like, you know, like if the government does this, only then will we progress. But there is a lot that we can do in our capacity, stuff like webinars, going to government schools and talking to people, having workshops about sex education and menstrual hygiene, and just a lot of stuff, teaching girls self-defense, teaching girls how to stay safe, are just basic things that can help girls go a long way. Because yeah, it more okay. Okay, menstrual products should be free. I already answered this. How does national development and feminism go hand in hand? Very similar question. um, so, as I said, feminism is nothing but the notion that men are equal to women, nothing more and nothing less. So, um, my bad. Um, so as I said, national development, if you look at it from the economic standpoint is regarded as one of the most important standpoints of any form of development. So as I said, it's a direct relation. The more girls that are educated, the higher your GDP. It's very directly proportionate. And so I think a lot of, how are we going to reach the perishing ones and how are we going to help them? It is very honestly, if it were up to me, as I said, like, you know, someone asked me, if you could do one thing in your capacity as a woman, what would you do? And I said, make women feel safe. We are still very small. I mean, one NGO does have the power to change the world, but we need to work hard for that. So how are we going to help them? Honestly, I feel like as I said before, nothing will work if the mindset of people does not change. No government policy, no NGO, no amount of anything is going to change, is going to help women or children if the mindset of people does not change. So I feel like these questions are being repeated now. So um, unless there are any new questions, I think I'm done. I've been speaking for 1 hour. That is a lot, and I'm very tired. It is 2:30 in the morning in India. Okay, so um, if there aren't any more questions, up. Thanks to everyone here, especially the ones in the Indian time zone. Like tomorrow we have school, and thank you for staying. I hope to do more sessions too. It was extremely fun. All right, so I think we're done. There are no more questions. Okay. We're done on YouTube. All right. Okay, so I think we're done with all the questions. And this has been great. It was kind of scary at first. I don't know if you could tell, but I was very nervous. But this went really well. And once again, I want to thank RPG Africa and my team at Fuel by Opinion. I love all of you guys. Ryan, Gia, Avni, thank you. You guys made this possible. So, thank you so much for listening, for staying up, for taking time out of your day. This made me really happy, and I hope I can do this again in the future sometime. All right. So, thank you guys. Bye. Good night. How do I end it?